Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever poured your heart out in prayer, only to wonder if your words reached beyond the ceiling? Have you ever cried out for answers, for hope, for direction, and felt like silence was all you got in return? Let me tell you something. Today you are heard, you are seen, and you are not alone. There are moments in life when the noise of the world and the weight of our troubles feel overwhelming, and our minds are racing with anxiety. In those moments, we turn to prayer, desperate for relief, for guidance, or simply for a sense of being heard. Sometimes the answers don't come in the form we expect, but one of the most powerful signs that God is listening is the sudden, unexplainable peace that washes over us. It's not the kind of peace you can find by distracting yourself with entertainment, scrolling through social media, or even talking to someone close to you. This peace comes from a place beyond human understanding, and it has the power to transform your entire perspective, even if your circumstances haven't changed. Think about it. How often have you been in the middle of a storm, facing problems that seem insurmountable, and you've reached a breaking point? You bow your head, close your eyes, and pour out everything you're feeling. Maybe you don't even have the words to express what's in your heart. All you can do is cry out. In that vulnerable, raw moment, something shifts. You can't explain it, but the chaos in your mind starts to quiet down. Your heart rate slows, and suddenly you feel like you can breathe again. That is not a coincidence. That is God responding to you, saying, I hear you and I am with you. This peace is not just emotional, it's deeply spiritual. It's a gift that can't be manufactured by any human effort. You might have tried countless ways to calm yourself, self-help books, meditation, or even talking to someone you trust, but nothing seems to work. Then, in the stillness of prayer, that peace arrives, unexpected and overwhelming in its gentleness. It's as though a heavy burden you didn't even realize you were carrying has been lifted. That's the kind of peace only God can provide. What's even more remarkable is that this peace doesn't necessarily mean the problem has gone away. Your financial struggles might still be there, the diagnosis might not have changed, or the relationship issue might remain unresolved. Yet somehow you feel a sense of assurance that everything will be okay. It's not because you figured out the solution or because the circumstances have miraculously shifted. It's because you've been reminded deep in your spirit that you're not alone. God is walking with you through it all, and that knowledge has the power to steady you in ways nothing else can. This peace is also a sign of trust. When you surrender your worries to God in prayer, you're making a decision consciously or unconsciously to release control. You're admitting that you don't have all the answers, and you're allowing yourself to rest in the knowledge that God does. And when you let go in that way, you create space for His peace to fill you. That peace isn't fragile or fleeting, it's steadfast, a quiet confidence that sustains you even when the world around you feels like it's falling apart. There's a reason why so many people describe prayer as a refuge, a place to find shelter from life's storms. It's not because prayer magically fixes everything, but because it reminds you of who you're praying to, a God who is bigger than your problems, more powerful than your fears, and deeply invested in your well-being. That realization alone can bring a level of peace that defies logic. It's not about denying reality or pretending everything is fine when it's not. Instead, it's about anchoring yourself to something greater than your current struggles, knowing that you are cared for and that your prayers are not in vain. Sometimes this peace is a quiet whisper in the middle of the night when the rest of the world is asleep and it's just you and God. Other times it's a wave of calm that sweeps over you in the middle of a chaotic day. You might be driving, working, or even sitting in silence, and suddenly it hits you. Everything feels a little lighter. It's not random. It's God reminding you, I've got this. Trust me. What's truly extraordinary is how this peace can ripple out into other areas of your life. When you carry that sense of calm and assurance, it affects how you handle challenges, how you interact with others, and how you view the future. You stop reacting out of fear or panic, and instead you approach situations with a quiet strength that comes from knowing you're not carrying the weight alone. That's the power of God's peace. It transforms not only your heart, but also the way you live. If you've ever experienced this kind of peace after prayer, hold on to it. It's a precious gift and a powerful reminder that God is listening. And if you haven't felt it yet, don't give up. Keep praying, keep reaching out, and trust that in His perfect timing, that peace will find you. It's not about the words you say or how long you pray. It's about the sincerity of your heart and your willingness to surrender. God hears you, and His peace is His way of letting you know that you're never alone, no matter how hard life gets. There are times in life when you pray with all your heart, asking for guidance, comfort, or a solution to a problem. And you wonder if your words are reaching beyond the walls of your room. You might not hear a voice, you might not see a miraculous change overnight, but one of the clearest and most powerful ways God shows that He's listening to your prayers is through the people He places in your life. Sometimes the answers we seek come not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through the quiet and profound actions of those around us. When you think about it, how often have you been struggling with something and seemingly out of nowhere, someone shows up with exactly what you need? It might be a friend who calls you just as you're feeling overwhelmed, offering encouragement without even knowing what you're going through. Or it could be a stranger who speaks a few kind words that resonate so deeply it feels like they were meant just for you. These moments are not random, they are intentional. They are God's way of saying, I hear you and I'm sending help. God uses people as vessels to deliver his messages, his comfort, and his solutions. The beauty of this is that it often happens in the most unexpected ways. You might be praying for direction, unsure of your next steps, and suddenly someone shares a story, a piece of advice, or an opportunity that aligns perfectly with what you needed to hear. It's as if God orchestrates the encounter, placing that person in your path at just the right time. Consider the times when you felt isolated, as though no one truly understands what you're going through. In those moments, you may have prayed for someone to simply understand, to listen, or to offer a sense of connection. And then, without warning, someone enters your life who seems to get it. They don't just listen to you, they hear you. They don't just sympathize, they empathize. That kind of connection is a reminder that God knows the desires of your heart, even the unspoken ones, and he's responding in a way that brings not just comfort, but also hope. Sometimes the people God uses aren't the ones you expect. It might not be a close friend or family member. It could be someone you've only just met, or even someone you've overlooked in the past. Yet, their words or actions carry a significance that goes beyond the moment. It might be as simple as a compliment on a day when you're feeling invisible, or a helping hand when you're at your wit's end. These moments may seem small, but they are profound reminders that God sees you, hears you, and is working behind the scenes on your behalf. There are also times when God uses people to challenge you, to push you out of your comfort zone, or to help you grow in ways you didn't think were possible. You might be praying for strength, for patience, or for clarity, and then someone comes into your life who tests those very things. At first, it might feel like your prayers are being ignored or that the situation is getting harder. But often, these people are placed in your life to refine you, to help you develop the qualities you've been asking for. God doesn't always give us the answer in the form we expect sometimes. He gives us the tools, and the people in our lives become part of the process. What's even more remarkable is how God uses people to meet needs you didn't even realize you had. Perhaps you've been praying for a breakthrough in one area of your life, and while you're waiting for that specific answer, someone comes along who helps you in a completely different way. Maybe they provide wisdom, encouragement, or even practical support that strengthens you for the journey ahead. It's as if God is saying, I know what you're asking for, but I also know what you need right now. And let's not forget the moments when we're the ones being used to answer someone else's prayer. Have you ever felt an unexplainable urge to reach out to someone, to offer help, or to simply be there for someone? That's God working through you, just as he works through others for you. It's a reminder that we are all connected. And that prayer is not just a conversation with God, it's a partnership with him to bring his love and grace into the world. These encounters with people, whether fleeting or long-lasting, are God's way of showing that he is actively involved in your life. They are proof that your prayers are not going unheard. Sometimes the answer doesn't come in the form of a dramatic revelation or an immediate solution. Instead, it comes through the kindness, wisdom, and presence of the people around you. It's subtle yet powerful, and it's a reminder that God's love and care often show up in the faces and hands of those he sends to walk beside us. So the next time someone reaches out to you in a way that feels almost too perfect to be a coincidence, take a moment to recognize it for what it is. It's not random. It's God using them as an instrument to remind you that you are seen, heard, and deeply cared for. Life has a way of presenting us with paths that seem promising, opportunities that look perfect, and dreams we believe are within our grasp, only to have a door slammed shut right in our faces. In those moments, it's easy to feel frustrated, confused, and even abandoned. You might find yourself questioning, why God? I prayed for this, I wanted this, I worked for this. Why would you let this door close? But what if I told you that even the closed doors are an answer to your prayers? What if those moments of rejection and redirection are signs that God is not only listening, but actively guiding you towards something better? When you pray for guidance, you're essentially asking for clarity, for wisdom, and for God to align your life with his purpose. But here's the thing, God doesn't always answer in ways that are immediately obvious or comfortable. Sometimes he answers by shutting the wrong door so that you don't waste your time, your energy, or your heart chasing after something that isn't meant for you. It's not a punishment, it's protection. It's God saying, this isn't it. I have something greater in store for you. Think about it. How often have you looked back on a situation where you were devastated by a closed door, only to later realize it was the best thing that could have happened? Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, or an opportunity that fell through. In the moment, it felt like the world was crumbling, but with time, you saw how that closed door led you to something far better, something you couldn't have imagined at the time. That's God at work. He sees the bigger picture, the path ahead that you can't yet see, and He's aligning everything for your good. Of course, it's not always easy to trust the process. When you're standing in front of a closed door, it can feel like rejection, failure, or even betrayal. You might wonder if you did something wrong, if you're being punished, or if your prayers are being ignored. But what you have to remember is that God's timing and plans are perfect, even when they don't align with your expectations. A closed door isn't a no from God, it's a not this, not now. Sometimes it's not just about the door that closes, but also about the one that opens. When God closes one door, He often opens another, one that leads to a path you never would have considered otherwise. But here's the catch: you have to be willing to walk away from the closed door to notice the open one. You can't spend all your time banging on a door that's been shut, hoping it will reopen. Trust that if God closed it, it's for a reason, and look around for the new opportunities He's placing before you. There's also an important lesson to be learned in the waiting period between a closed door and an open one. That space of uncertainty, where you're not sure what's next, is often where God does His most transformative work. It's where He refines you, strengthens you, and prepares you for what's ahead. You might be praying for something specific, but God is using the time to shape you into the person who can handle what He has planned for you. The closed door isn't just about redirecting you, it's about growing you. And let's not forget the role of trust in this process. When God closes a door, He's asking you to trust Him, even when you don't understand. It's a test of faith, a reminder that He is in control and that His plans for you are better than anything you could design for yourself. Trust isn't about having all the answers, it's about believing that God does. It's about surrendering your need to control the outcome and resting in the assurance that He knows what He's doing. Sometimes the signs are clear: a door slams shut, and another one opens almost immediately, pointing you in a new direction. Other times, the signs are more subtle. Maybe you start to notice roadblocks piling up, making it harder and harder to move forward. Maybe you feel a sense of unease or lack of peace about a decision you were once so sure of. Those moments are God's way of gently nudging you toward the door He wants you to walk through. And then there are the times when God closes doors to protect you from something you can't see. You might be praying for an opportunity that looks perfect on the surface, but God knows it would lead to heartache, disappointment, or a path that pulls you away from Him. Those closed doors are His way of keeping you safe, even when you don't understand it at the time. Every closed door is a part of God's plan to guide you to the right one. It's not rejection, it's redirection. It's not the end, it's the beginning of something new. And while it may not always make sense in the moment, trust that one day you'll look back and see how it all came together, how every closed door led you exactly where you were meant to be. One of the most profound ways you can know that God is listening to your prayers is when you experience unexpected strength and endurance during the hardest times in your life. It's not a strength you conjure up on your own, nor is it something that can be explained by sheer willpower. It's the kind of strength that carries you when you feel like you can't take another step, when the weight of your burdens feels like it's too much to bear, and yet somehow you keep going. That strength is God's way of answering your prayers, often in ways you didn't even realize you needed. When you pray in the midst of struggles, you may ask God for a way out. You might pray for the pain to stop, for the situation to resolve, or for a miracle that will change everything in an instant. But instead of removing the difficulty, God gives you something even more powerful: the ability to endure it. He equips you with resilience, patience, and a deeper sense of inner strength that you may not have known you had. This strength is not about avoiding hardship, but about facing it with courage and grace, knowing that you are not alone in the battle. Think about the times in your life when you faced challenges that seemed impossible to overcome. Maybe it was a loss that left you broken, a setback that crushed your spirit, or a season of uncertainty where nothing seemed to make sense. In those moments, you may have felt like giving up. But as you prayed, you found yourself waking up each day, putting one foot in front of the other, and somehow moving forward. That wasn't just you, it was God sustaining you, giving you the strength to keep going, even when you didn't feel capable of it. This divine strength often shows up in subtle ways. It might not feel like a dramatic surge of energy or a sudden burst of motivation. Instead, it might come as a quiet determination that keeps you going, a small voice within you that whispers, "You can do this." It's the strength to take the next step, to hold on for one more day, and to trust that better days are ahead, even when you can't see them yet. God's strength often becomes most apparent when you feel at your weakest. There's a reason the Bible says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." When you've reached the end of your rope, when you've exhausted all your resources, that's when God steps in and carries you. It's not about pretending to be strong on your own. It's about leaning on Him and allowing His strength to fill the gaps where yours falls short. This strength isn't just about surviving, it's about growing. God doesn't simply give you the ability to endure hardship. He uses those experiences to refine you, to make you stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Every trial you face becomes an opportunity for growth, and every moment of endurance becomes a testimony to the power of God working in your life. Over time, you may even come to see those difficult seasons as blessings, because they revealed a depth of strength and faith you didn't know you had. There's also a sense of peace that accompanies this strength. It's not the kind of peace that comes from having everything figured out or from knowing exactly how things will work out. It's the peace of knowing that you are held by a God who loves you and who is in control. That peace allows you to keep going, even when the path ahead is uncertain. It's a reminder that you don't have to carry your burdens alone. God is with you every step of the way. Sometimes God's strength is revealed through the support of others. You might find that when you're feeling weak, He places people in your life who lift you up, encourage you, and help you shoulder the load. These individuals become instruments of His strength, reminding you that you're not alone and that help is always within reach. Their presence is an answer to your prayers, a tangible expression of God's care and provision. It's also important to recognize that God's strength isn't just for the big, dramatic moments of life. It's there in the small, everyday struggles as well. It's the patience to deal with a difficult situation at work, the courage to have a tough conversation, or the perseverance to keep pursuing your goals when the odds seem stacked against you. Every time you find yourself pushing through, even when it feels impossible, that's God's strength at work in your life. And while you may not always recognize it in the moment, there will come a time when you look back and realize just how much strength God gave you. You'll see how He carried you through the darkest valleys, how He gave you the endurance to keep going when you wanted to quit, and how He used those experiences to make you stronger and more resilient. You'll realize that every step you took, every battle you fought, was a testament to the power of God answering your prayers, not by taking away the challenge, but by giving you the strength to overcome it. One of the most reassuring signs that God is listening to your prayers is the profound sense of peace that comes over you, even when your circumstances haven't changed. It's a peace that doesn't make sense to the world, a calm that goes beyond logic, and a stillness that settles deep within your soul. This kind of peace isn't something you can manufacture or achieve on your own. It's a gift from God, a response to your prayers, and a reminder that He is near, working in ways you may not yet see. When you pray, especially during times of chaos, uncertainty, or pain, you're seeking more than just a solution. You're seeking reassurance, a sense that you're not alone and that everything will ultimately be okay. While the answer to your specific prayer may take time to unfold, God often provides immediate comfort in the form of His peace. It's His way of saying, "I hear you, I'm with you, trust me." This peace doesn't necessarily mean that the problem is resolved, but it gives you the strength and clarity to face whatever lies ahead. This peace isn't tied to your external circumstances. You may still be in the middle of a storm, with challenges swirling around you and no clear resolution in sight. Yet, despite the chaos, you find yourself unusually calm. You're no longer consumed by fear, worry, or anxiety. Instead, you feel grounded, as if you're anchored in something far greater than the situation you're facing. That's the peace of God at work in your life, a peace that surpasses all understanding and guards your heart and mind. It's important to recognize that this peace doesn't mean you stop caring about your problems or that you're indifferent to the outcomes. Rather, it means you've chosen to trust God with the things you can't control. You've handed over your worries, your fears, and your uncertainties to Him, and in return, He's given you His peace. It's an exchange that doesn't make sense by worldly standards, but is transformative for those who experience it. This peace often comes in moments of prayer or quiet reflection. When you pour out your heart to God and release the burdens you've been carrying, it might not happen immediately, but as you continue to pray and surrender your worries, you begin to feel a shift. Your heart, which was once heavy with anxiety, becomes lighter. Your mind, which was once racing with what ifs, becomes still. And even though nothing has changed externally, you know deep within that God is in control. Sometimes this peace comes in unexpected ways. You might wake up one morning after days or weeks of stress and feel an unexplainable sense of calm. Or you might be in the middle of a difficult moment and suddenly a wave of reassurance washes over you. It could come through a scripture verse that speaks directly to your heart, a song that lifts your spirit, or a quiet moment in nature where you feel God's presence so clearly. These are not coincidences, they are God's way of reminding you that He is listening and that He has everything under control. This peace also brings clarity. When you're consumed by worry, it's hard to think clearly or make decisions, but when you're filled with God's peace, your perspective shifts. You're able to see things more clearly, not through the lens of fear, but through the lens of faith. You begin to trust that even if you don't have all the answers, God does. And because He is faithful, you can take the next step with confidence, knowing that He will guide you. Another beautiful aspect of this peace is the way it changes how you approach life's challenges. Instead of reacting with panic or despair, you respond with trust and patience. You're no longer driven by the need to control every detail or fix every problem immediately. Instead, you rest in the assurance that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating everything for your good. This doesn't mean you stop working towards solutions or taking action, but you do so with a sense of calm and confidence, knowing that you're not alone in the process. This peace is also contagious. When you carry God's peace within you, it affects the people around you. Your calmness in the face of adversity becomes a source of inspiration and encouragement to others. They may not understand where your peace comes from, but they see the difference it makes in your life. In this way, your peace becomes a testimony to God's faithfulness and a reminder to others that they too can find peace in Him. This peace is a reflection of God's presence. It's not something that can be taken away by external circumstances because it doesn't depend on them. It comes from knowing that you are deeply loved, fully seen, and completely cared for by the Creator of the universe. It's a peace that whispers to your soul, you are safe. You are held. And no matter what happens, I am with you. This is how you know that God is not only listening to your prayers, but actively responding, giving you the strength, comfort, and reassurance you need to face whatever comes your way. Another powerful way you can know that God is listening to your prayers is through divine intervention and seemingly unexplainable events that unfold in your life. These moments might seem like coincidences to others, but to those who have been seeking God in prayer, they are clear signs that He is moving in their lives. These interventions often come in ways that are unexpected, perfectly timed, or so intricately designed that they leave no doubt they are the work of a higher power. They are reminders that God is not only listening, but is actively involved in the details of your life, orchestrating outcomes for your benefit. Divine intervention doesn't always come with dramatic flair or earth-shattering miracles. More often, it reveals itself in the small, subtle, and deeply personal ways that only you could recognize. For example, you might be praying for a breakthrough in your finances, and out of nowhere, you receive an unexpected refund, bonus, or financial opportunity that eases your burden. Or you might be praying for guidance, and you suddenly meet someone who offers wisdom, advice, or a connection that propels you forward. These aren't random acts, they're God stepping into your story, answering your prayers in ways that only He can. Sometimes divine intervention shows up as protection from harm or missteps. Perhaps you were set on a path that seemed right, but obstacles kept appearing to stop you. While it may have been frustrating at the time, looking back, you realize that those roadblocks kept you from making a choice that would have led to pain or failure. God's hand was there, redirecting you and ensuring that His plans for you were not derailed. What seemed like a setback was, in fact, a setup for something better. Timing is another hallmark of divine intervention. You might have been praying for something for weeks, months, or even years. And when the answer finally comes, it arrives at the perfect moment. It's as though God was waiting for just the right time to align everything in your life so that His answer would have maximum impact. This timing often reveals itself in hindsight when you realize that if your prayer had been answered earlier, you wouldn't have been ready or the circumstances wouldn't have been ideal. God's timing isn't about delay, it's about precision and purpose. There are also times when divine intervention feels almost surreal because it involves elements you couldn't have orchestrated yourself. You might receive a call from someone you haven't spoken to in years, just when you need encouragement or help. You might find yourself in the right place at the right time, encountering an opportunity or resource you had no way of planning for. These moments often leave you marveling at how everything came together so perfectly, knowing that it wasn't by chance, but by God's design. Another way God shows divine intervention is by bringing peace or resolution to situations that seemed impossible. You might have been dealing with a conflict that appeared unfixable, yet somehow things begin to fall into place. Hearts soften, relationships mend, and circumstances shift in ways that are hard to explain. These moments are not just lucky breaks, they are God working behind the scenes, answering your prayers in ways that bring restoration and healing. Divine intervention also manifests as a heightened sense of clarity or intuition that guides your decisions. Have you ever prayed for direction and then felt a sudden sense of knowing what to do? It's as if the fog clears and you can see the path ahead with confidence. That's God answering your prayer, providing you with wisdom and discernment to make choices that align with His will. It's not a voice booming from the heavens, but an inner conviction that gives you peace about your decision. Sometimes divine intervention feels like a shift in your circumstances, but other times it's a change within you. Perhaps you've been praying for courage and suddenly you find yourself stepping out in faith, doing things you never thought you could. Or maybe you've been asking for patience and you notice that you're able to handle challenges with a calmness and grace that surprises even you. These internal transformations are just as much a sign of God's intervention as external changes because they show how He is molding and equipping you for the journey ahead. It's also worth noting that divine intervention doesn't always give you what you want, but often provides what you need. You might have been praying for one thing only to find that God answers in a completely different way, one that ultimately serves a greater purpose in your life. At first, it might not make sense, but over time, you begin to see how God's intervention brought you to a place of greater fulfillment, growth, or understanding than you ever could have imagined. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of divine intervention is the way it strengthens your faith. Each time you witness God moving in your life, your trust in Him deepens. These moments serve as reminders that He is always present, always listening, and always working on your behalf. They encourage you to keep praying, keep trusting, and keep believing, even when the answers don't come right away. Divine intervention isn't about big miracles or dramatic gestures. It's about the intricate, intentional ways God shows up in your life, reminding you that He hears every prayer, knows every need, and loves you more than you can comprehend. It's about recognizing His hand in the ordinary and extraordinary, trusting that He is always working for your good. Every unexpected blessing, every perfectly timed answer, and every shift in your circumstances is a testament to His presence and power in your life. God's listening is evident in the peace, strength, guidance, and divine interventions we experience. These signs remind us that He is always present, working in our lives and answering prayers in His perfect way and timing. Trust Him, even when you cannot yet see the full picture.